How is everybody doing? This is Mongo Slade, and we're with our Mystery Box Sunday live stream to talk about Guardians of the Galaxy. So I watched the movie. Um, I have some thoughts on it. The Guardians franchise has been one of the better franchises in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Even though I didn't really care for the second edition, it's been a solid franchise with very meaningful characters to the Marvel universe. So it has been very important to the Marvel universe, the Guardians of the Galaxy, and now apparently it is over. So we're going to talk about Guardians of the Galaxy 3. In addition to that, yesterday was Free Comic Book Day, and I have some Free Comic Book Day thoughts, and I also want to talk about some of the things I picked up from Free Comic Book Day and some of my disappointment from that as well. I was asked to speak on the writers' strike, so we're going to talk about that a little bit too, even though probably not a lot, but we're going to talk about that a little bit as well. And after that, there was something else. It was in the it's in the notes. I think that was it. Free Comic Book Day. I think I was going to talk about manga or something. Oh no, I was going to talk about Saint Seiya, the uh, the anime I'm currently watching. It's from the I think the early '90s, early to mid '90s. I remember seeing it on television, but I haven't seen it in years, so I decided to just start watching it. I ended up watching like 30 episodes straight or something like that. Much better than I thought it would be, but still kind of formulaic. Um, so I did not watch Power Rangers. I not gonna lie, I completely forgot. I'm not gonna lie, I completely forgot about Power Rangers. The only Power Rangers I actually did see was the finale of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers mashup with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which got a lot of people buzzing this week because they saw the turtles as black people for the first time, even though this wasn't the first time they done it, and it was humorous. The turtles were actually black in uh, the first issue of that series, but a panel from the most recent uh, issue was floating around with black Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and people was like, "Oh, I can't believe this! They're black!" And I was like, "Yeah, well, clearly they're not black. It was technology, but I mean, it's just a weird thing that those guys are going through." Anyway, sorry for being late. How is everybody doing this evening? WG Phil, AJ3, Light, and anybody else listening. Thank you all very much. I did hear. I actually listened to the Jungle Boy interview. It was Jungle Boy, Ruby Soho, and Anna J. Um, it was stupid, and I don't want to go through it, but yeah, it was. He's incredibly dry. He's just got no personality. You know, he's just a dude with no personality. It's real unfortunate, but I don't want to talk about that guy today. I do want to talk about Guardians of the Galaxy, however. So we're gonna we're gonna spend a little bit of time on this in a minute. Give a couple of more people some time to come in before we have fun with it. As usual, I only do spoiler reviews. I do not see the purpose in a review that is spoiler free. So to me, it seems pretty silly to do spoiler free uh, spoiler free stuff. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, it's your best bet to at least skip this first maybe 40 minutes maybe of the movie, and because it's going to be a bit of a discussion on it, and then you'll be able to come back to it a little bit later, I guess. But it will be here for everybody, just in case. Okay, so it's almost yeah, we're going to talk about the WGA a little bit later. We're going to talk about it probably after I talk about the uh, the movie. I also watched Ant Man, but I didn't like it, so we're gonna ignore it. I didn't like it, so we're just gonna have to ignore it. Whether I actually like Guardians of the Galaxy or not, we're gonna figure that out right now. All right, so Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Uh, we start out with, what is the story about? Well, as I was watching the movie, I was jogging my memory of what 2 is about because I didn't like 2. So I kind of had tossed 2 out of my memory. This one is better than 2. That much is for sure. This feels more like 2 to me. And the theme of Guardians of the Galaxy has always been family. So a lot of the characters that's going through the movie, they're going to have family ties, or they're looking to have family ties or something. And this brings us to Rocket Raccoon, who's kind of always been the loner of the group, the guy who, his family is the Guardian because he doesn't know where he came from. He doesn't even know what he is. Of course, this is the story of him finding out who and what he is. So we start out with Rocket having memories. He's starting to remember the time he spent in the cell when he was a normal raccoon. And all those memories starts coming in. At this time, they are attacked. The Guardians are attacked by Adam Warlock, and who summarily kicks everybody's ass, but he kind of blasts Rocket Raccoon. And Rocket is down, and he's not moving, and everybody thinks he's dead. They try to do some kind of operation on him, only to find out that there's some kind of bug in his chest, that if they try to operate on him in any way, he will die. So this gives us the story. Peter Quill doesn't want to lose a member of his family, his new family. He's going to figure out how to turn this thing off that's in Rocket Raccoon's chest. And in order to do that, he's got to find Rocket Raccoon's creator, which ends up being the High Evolutionary. So that takes us to the story. And of course, we go through there. The High Evolutionary is a mad scientist who creates these animal cyborg monsters. They're visually very goddamn cool in the movie. They're just constantly like gigantic beasts with metal parts and stuff like that. It's really cool. The character, as he was played, has a god complex, which is interesting because he's an atheist character, which, very loudly says, there is no God. That's why I stepped in at one point in the movie. He's very animated, and he's far more animated than the High Evolutionary has been in the comics. That was very jarring, but he gave the character a little bit more life in terms of how he played the character through. At the same time, though, it was so different that I was kind of like, I didn't really feel like it was the High Evolutionary. But when you look at the world he built, Counter Earth, it's basically the Truman Show for these hybrid creatures that they worship High Evolutionary. And that's how it is in the comics too. Where you get the Counter Earth, and he's the supreme being and all this sort of stuff. Now, the High Evolutionary as a character, for people who are not really familiar with him, he's just what he is in the movie. He's a mad scientist who creates hybrid creatures. They did a retcon several years ago where the High Evolutionary is actually the creator of Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, which everybody hates. Unanimously, everybody hates that because they wanted them to be the children of Magneto, which is how we ended up getting with Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver being able to be in both the X-Men and in the Avengers, but there's different versions of those characters. The High Evolutionary as a character is pretty damn cool. Like his motivations and everything are very dope. The problem with the character is that it is a B-level villain with a very cool idea. The problem is that they push the X-Men for so long, and the X-Men already have a villain that's similar to the High Evolutionary, and that's Mr. Sinister. Now, Mr. Sinister, captures mutants and experiments on them and all that kind of stuff. So when you look at it, even though I think the High Evolutionary came first, um, he was surpassed by Mr. Sinister in the eyes of like comic book fans because Mr. Sinister was part of the X-Men, and the X-Men dominated Marvel Comics for like 40 years. So having the High Evolutionary as the big bad, while for me it was interesting because I think the character is interesting. I can understand how it could be like he doesn't have any sort of special powers or anything like that. He's just like a crazy scientist who, manipulates these creatures to do his bidding. A lot of it is brainwashing and how they were programmed and all that kind of stuff. And you get that through the Rocket Raccoon story, is that you know Rocket is an important piece to the High Evolutionaries, his plan. And Adam Warlock was sent to collect Rocket Raccoon because the High Evolutionary really values Rocket Raccoon's brain. So we find out that High Evolutionary, because he's a scientist, he's manipulating all of these animals. These animals, some of whom end up being Rocket Raccoon's friends, including Lila, who was an otter, who was the closest thing to a love interest that Rocket Raccoon ever had. And he becomes friends with these creatures in this cage. And High Evolutionary is trying to find a way to make better hybrids. He wants to create both a peaceful society and a peaceful species so that they would live and work and worship him all in peace. And he's I guess it's eugenics. Okay, so that's essentially what it is. It's eugenics. He's trying to find ways to breed out aggression or be able to control aggression, because he does definitely want some of these creatures to be aggressive because he needs defenders, but he wants to be able to control the aggression level of these creatures. So after operating on Rocket Raccoon better understands this process. He has his brain functions very well. He actually able to figure out what the High Evolutionary screwed up in his experiment. And because of this, the High Evolutionary is like, oh my God, like this creature that I created is incredibly intelligent. In some ways, it's more intelligent than me. Its capacity for learning and adapting is next level. So he actually utilizes Rocket in order to perfect the process so that he can breed better animals. And then he was going to discard Rocket afterwards. This led to Rocket trying to escape and all of his friends getting killed in the escape. This is all coming through Rocket as he's in a coma, in sort of a dream state, that he's seeing all of his friends and he's being reminded of all of this stuff. And that part of the story was excellent. The Rocket Raccoon parts of this story were tremendous. They were all very good. The next part that we got is Gamora. Now, this is why I couldn't really remember the Gamora part of the story, because this Gamora isn't the same Gamora that was in love with Peter Quill before. This is where I kind of probably should have been paying attention more to the phases in the movies in Marvel Comics, because I was like, why would it be a different Gamora? But at the same time, I do remember there being two of them. And I do remember that cross universe stuff that they did or whatever. I was like, I don't know. But Gamora essentially is a member of the Ravengers now. And the Ravengers are, with the Guardians go to the Ravengers. They need to infiltrate Org Corp before they know it's the High Evolutionary. You think it's just some random corporation. So that brings some hijinks with some funny stuff between Drax and Mantis and all of them, which I think they're pretty good. I like that pairing of Drax and Mantis. I really like that. Adam Warlock was a big part of the story too, even though he was not that important in this series, in this movie. Adam Warlock, if I was going to complain about this movie, he'd be the number one complaint. Adam Warlock is pointless without Thanos and the Infinity Gauntlet and all that stuff. Without all of that, you really don't have anything in terms of a story with Adam Warlock. Um, he comes across as a messianic figure in the comics. He's the guardian of the Infinity Stones after they're taken away from Thanos, but he actually does um, combat Thanos. So he's not that in the movie. So he's basically just a mama's boy. They took part of Adam Warlock's character, which is that he's he's humanoid and he has a childlike brain. They took that and basically and took it to the next level. Now he's taking pets and he's keeping them, telling them to stay. He's very childish. His behavior is completely and totally inappropriate at times. And they really focused on those elements of Adam Warlock. They didn't really focus on the messianic portions of Adam Warlock, which, if you are a fan of the character, those are the portions of the story that make sense. Now, Adam Warlock is a lot like Sentry and some of those other characters in Marvel, where he ends up having split personalities and different versions of him exist and all this kind of stuff. But the Infinity Watch version of Adam Warlock is usually what they were going for when you have the stones and all that kind of stuff. And that is an Adam Warlock story. So he should have been introduced probably in the first movie, and joined them for the battle for Thanos and all that kind of stuff, and then maybe got killed off at the end. But introducing him in the third movie, that's like introducing Goku in like the third part of Dragon Ball. Like it's really silly to introduce Adam Warlock after Thanos is already gone. It literally doesn't make any sense. And as a character, he doesn't make any sense. But in this version, he's partially, his entire race of beings is created by the High Evolutionary. Therefore, he's the High Evolutionary, essentially his assassin, his hitman, is sent to collect Rocket Raccoon and all this kind of stuff. And if he doesn't do so, then the High Evolutionary is going to destroy his entire civilization, which is basically just him and his mom. His mom ends up getting killed anyway when High Evolutionary destroyed Counter Earth. He did so for pretty much no reason, just because he figures he can do better, which is sick, And they did a really good job of making that character feel. It made you feel something about that character, that he looked at this completely peaceful society, which is what he wanted, and still found imperfection in it, still found a reason to destroy it. And it was sickening. But that's really what you want to get out of a villain. It was truly disturbing, to be quite honest. So I definitely like that. Quill in this movie, they mentioned earlier in the movie that he had a grandparent. I think they said a grandfather that he left behind on Earth. So there's talk about how he should go home and see his grandfather and all this kind of stuff, but he's more focused on saving Rocket. And because he sees Rocket as being his family, he sees Gamora as being his family. But Rocket is out of commission in a coma for most of the movie. Drax and Mantis are kind of idiots. Nebula is still very prickly. And, so it's not looking strong. He's holding on to the family portion of the Guardians of the Galaxy much tighter than anybody else when it comes to this story. And he's driving it, as he should. As the main character, the captain of the ship, he is the one driving the story. For the most part, it matters to him that Rocket lives. He's really the one who kind of really is pushing for people to save Rocket. And he shows that he really cares about it, which is great. So in the thing with Gamora, there's some double crossing where there's parts of the movie where she's actually doing business with the High Evolutionary, There's parts where she's, going back and forth before she finally makes a decision to stay on the side of the Guardians until the very end. Um, it was my favorite part of the movie is the counter Earth sequence, because you see that the villain actually got what he wanted and still found a way that it wasn't good enough. You know, like that was my favorite part. He also set up this incredible trap where he allowed Star Lord and all these guys to find him and approach him, but he really just intended to use them to find out where Rocket is. And that really was the plan. You know, he talked about meeting or going to Earth, saying that he liked Earth, he liked the people. He said he wanted to recreate Earth, with all of the good and none of the bad, and that his goal is to perfect the universe, which is absolutely psychotic. I love it. That's great villain shit right there. I'm going to perfect the universe as if you could, right? So we get some Howard the Duck cameos in the middle of this thing. At one part of the story, Rocket Raccoon is seemingly dead, where his heart stops beating. He goes to the afterlife where all of his friends are, and he gets a little kiss from Lila. And you're supposed to believe that Rocket is dead, or whatever. And then, of course, he comes back to life and he rejoins the team. And at that point, we go into the big battle sequence at the end, where the High Evolutionary invades the world of the Ravagers, which I think is nowhere, and all of these cyborgs and monsters and everything are coming out, and they're destroying everything. And Rocket Raccoon and High Evolutionary have their meeting. But let's back up for a moment, because as Rocket Raccoon is like on the High Evolutionary ship for the first time since he was there as a youngling, I guess you could say. He finally finds out what he is, because he sees other small creatures like himself with the same sad eyes and everything. And he looks at the plate and it says raccoon. And he's been called a raccoon several times throughout the series, and he always says he doesn't know what that is. He's not a raccoon. So he finally looks at it and has accepted that's what he is. He's a raccoon. He opens out. He starts trying to save all the little animals that the High Evolutionary has in bondage. Likewise, you have Drax and Mantis and Nebula. They are trying to save these children, these little silver-haired children that the High Evolutionary has been creating. So there's a lot of the High Evolutionary is creating creatures, or these are finished products in some way, and these are the raw materials, but they're all living creatures, and they're going out and they're saving them and pulling them from the fire. So when they have the final showdown between High Evolutionary and Rocket Raccoon, we really get some real animated villain monologue from the High Evolutionary. One of which he called Rocket Raccoon an abomination, which is hilarious considering everything he creates is an abomination. The Guardians of the Galaxy team up to defeat the High Evolutionary. They all basically get a hit in on him. Then they peel his face off because he got this mask that's like peeling his face back. It's a lot like I've seen it used before, but I can't remember who did it before. It's right on the tip of my tongue. So I can see it in my. It's like Thomas the Tank Engine, where like a face on a body, but it's like pulled back like a mask or something like that. So they peel it off to see that what he really looks like, and then he's left basically laying there defeated, and Rocket has the opportunity to kill him. Yeah, Red Skull. Red Skull was a good one. And he's gonna kill him, and then he decides he's not going to do so because he's a guardian of the galaxy. I was like, what? Like, I don't know. It's not really a good idea, you know. Like Rocket Raccoon has been sort of the most amoral of all of the characters in the series. Um, and this is sort of a redemption arc for him, if you think about it that way, because he was mostly into killing and stealing early in the series. He didn't care much about anybody or anything. He didn't care about his own background, who he was, or anything. And now he actually does care. He's taken the time to save all the other creatures, and he even spares the High Evolutionary, which is, a decent character arc for him. The part of the movie, like by this point, I'm okay with the movie. I'm just kind of rolling my eyes a little bit at some of the stuff. So the planet is being destroyed. So they're trying to get off this planet, and Quill is running for the ship. He drops his MP3 player. He stops to pick it back up, and he ends up missing the ship. So he ends up getting pulled into space, and where he is freezing to death. And it's a really sad sight. And I was legitimately like, oh shit, like this is a way to end the series if you kill off like the main character. So earlier in the series, Rocket Raccoon actually saves Adam Warlock, or was it Groot? It was one of the two. And when when he asks why, like I tried to kill you, I tried to capture you, why? The idea was that he deserved a second chance. Everybody deserves second chances. And at this point, Adam Warlock has lost his mother. He realized that High Evolutionary didn't care about him. So when he saw Peter Quill dying in space, you remember that Adam Warlock can fly in space. So Adam Warlock snatches Star-Lord from space, takes him to safety on the ship, and he, of course, survives. And this leads to the final segment, where after this new brush with death, Star-Lord now realizes that there is still things that he needs to do. He has unfinished business on Earth, and that he's been running from his mom's death since it happened. And it's time to go back and face that. And again, family is a theme. And the Guardians have been his family for all this time, but he does still have flesh and blood family. So he's going to leave the ship to go join his grandfather. And then everybody starts to have a reason to leave the ship. Mantis wants to, she's talking about how she was always told what to do. She always did what other people wanted. She wanted to know what she wanted to do. So she's going to leave the ship to go figure out what she wants to do. Nebula wants to stay because now they got all these children that they saved from the High Evolutionary. And she wants to try to build a society with these children. Because, again, Nebula has always wanted a family. Gamora was her sister, but she had like this crazy sibling rivalry with her, and she was always jealous of Gamora. And now she's got the opportunity to make a family of her own. And so that was great. So Drax kind of stuck in the middle. Like he really wanted to go with Mantis, but Mantis rejected him. And then Nebula hit him where it hurts by saying, hey, you always wanted to be a father. This is your chance. And they showed it a couple of times during the movie where Drax has a good rapport with the children. And that, to me, was a very touching scene. Knowing that this guy his child was killed by Thanos, but that fatherhood is still within him. So he still has a good rapport with children. And the children like him. So he stays on the ship with Nebula in order to help the children. At this point, Gamora goes back to the Ravagers, who are now her new family. And Adam Warlock, he joins the Guardians of the Galaxy as Rocket Raccoon is made the new captain. So Rocket essentially loses everybody that he came to love, with the exception of Groot and I think maybe two other people. And he's the new captain of the ship. And that's kind of how the movie ends, is with Rocket having inherited the MP3 player that Peter Quill has been carrying for who knows how long, 10 years, 15 years or whatever. And he's the new captain. And Quill is letting it go. That him giving his MP3 player to Rocket Raccoon is essentially him letting go of his mother's death and letting go of that side of his life, that part of his life, and he's going to go see his grandfather. And Star Lord essentially is done. So all in all, I think it really hit the note of the theme correctly. You know, again, family has been an important part of the Guardians franchise up to this point. So everybody had basically a family-based reason to leave the team. You know, and a lot of the actors, of course, have said that this is the last time they were going to play these characters anyway. Batista said this is the last time he's going to play Drax. The young lady who plays Gamora has already said she's done playing Gamora. So they're not going to return to these characters. So to me, it probably would have been an opportunity to kill these characters off. Therefore, you're not tempted to use them again. Um, so I don't know, but Star Lord is going to return. That was the post-credit scene. Is that the legendary Star Lord will be returning? So I'm guessing they're going to do maybe some Star Lord stuff on Earth, or they're going to take him back in space with a different team or something like that. But it's in the same vein as comics Guardians of the Galaxy, which always has members coming and going for different reasons. So the Guardians dismantling and then reforming under a different unit is not that big of a surprise. They do that stuff all the time. There's been several different Guardians of the Galaxy teams. This team essentially becomes the official team with the movie coming out. With the movie being created, this is sort of the official Guardians of the Galaxy team. Even though I know a lot of this stuff is based on the Dan Abnett. Well, what was the name of the artist? The Dan Abnett version of Guardians of the Galaxy. I know a lot of the comic is based on this, but overall, I think the movie was good. Was there like an incredible amount of wokeness in it? I really didn't see a lot of it. There was a lot of actually some really Christian themes in it, even though they didn't use sort of the Jesus figure of Adam Warlock. They had a Rocket Raccoon experience in Afterlife, where he got to see his loved one. There was a Noah's Ark kind of situation there, where you have the High Evolutionary ship that has like all of these different animals on it. But it's a twisted Noah's Ark, of course, because the High Evolutionary is going to basically, hybridize all of these creatures and torture them for, the foreseeable future. And it's very difficult if you're an animal lover. This movie is really going to kick your ass in terms of you watching animals be tortured. But it's not a lot. It's not like a brutal animal torture or anything like that. I think people who like get super triggered by that kind of stuff, you ought to be okay. All right, I don't think this is gonna make you cry from the way that the poor little animals are tortured, but you do see that they don't enjoy the manipulation. They do not enjoy the experiment. But now that they have higher levels of consciousness, they have higher levels of dreams. They have aspirations. At one point during the movie, Rocket Raccoon and the team are talking about going on the ship and going to see the blue skies and all this kind of stuff. And it's really touching because you realize that, the High Evolutionary gave him this brain, made him this way, but still sees him as a lesser creature, still sees him as an abomination that should be, manipulated and controlled by him and him alone. How dare Rocket Raccoon have thoughts of his own or desires of his own, or even think that he deserves to exist in the perfect world? And I think that was a pretty brutal thing too, when after they perfect the process to make the hybrids peaceful, Rocket Raccoon's like, we can, this ought to be great when we create the perfect world or whatever. And the High Evolutionary was like, we? Oh, no. Like, you was able to figure out all of this stuff all the advanced mechanics and you would figure out all the science, but you couldn't figure out that you don't belong. And that's really what led him to say, we got to get out of here. We're going to get destroyed. We're going to get killed. And he tried to save his friends and ended up getting killed anyway. But that was that was excellent. The real strong suit for me is Rocket coming to grips with what he is. You know, all the years of him saying he's not a raccoon, he doesn't know what he is, him being bristly towards other people, not really accepting the responsibility of being a hero or a heroic character. He's always been sort of at the most neutral, you know. Uh, I never forget like one of my favorite scenes in the first movie because I really like the first one. Is when him and Star Lord are arguing about why they should save the universe, you know, and Rocket's like, I don't care about the universe. Why should we save the universe? And Quill's like, because I'm one of the 5 billion people who live in it, you know. So that's like my favorite scene because you get to see how crazy Rocket is, you know. But you look back on that movie, having watched this one, you can see that he has sort of learned that you can't trust anybody else because he helped the high evolutionary and he got burnt, you know. And people have always looked down on him for being a rodent or whatever. And it's something he had to work through. He had this. It's very human in that way, you know. They gave this character a very human story that's very relatable, and I think that's the strongest strong suit of the movie is how human Rocket comes across, especially if you consider how he was in the first movie. You can legitimately see character growth, and you see character growth in everybody. Nebula is different than she used to be. Quill is different than he used to be. They did some weird stuff with Gamora, where she was actually getting softer in the first movie, and then kind of softer in the second. And then she comes across as being pretty cutthroat and you know selfish in the third movie. But then you realize, oh, it's a different Gamora, but I can't confirm because I don't remember. You're asking me to remember a lot when it comes to all these Marvel movies that I've seen. But of course, the big arguing point for me is that Adam Warlock is completely pointless and probably shouldn't even been in this film because without the Infinity Stones and Thanos, what the hell is your story with him? And we see that he doesn't really have one. Also, I found it weird that we didn't have the Nova Corps in this movie at all. I was actually very disappointed in how little the Novas exist in the Marvel universe at this point, considering they are literally the space police. But it makes sense for them to use like the Ravengers. I'm just saying it's kind of weird that they wouldn't use like the actual space police at any point for any reason, you know. So that's weird. So let's talk about this one thing that I think before we get to the David Mamet question. The High Evolutionary, the villain, this idea of making a perfect universe. You get this idea where this atheist scientist has a god complex. And when you really take into account science, and I remember Neil deGrasse Tyson having a conversation on, I believe it was Joe Rogan's podcast, and he was asking like, why are all scientists evil? Why does science have to be an evil thing? Why can't the scientist be the hero? Well, like sometimes the scientist is the hero, but quite often the scientist ends up being the villain. There's archetypical reasons why. Because people who are intelligent, they typically are antisocial. You see that with people who usually have very high IQs. They usually don't have a lot of friends because they look at things from a different way. Usually they have lower emotional intelligence, what they call EQ, emotional intelligence. I mean, basically, they may tell the truth in a way that is bristly and hurts other people's feelings and keeps other people at arm's length. But the reason why scientists are typically considered evil is because there's a deep ego that pushes a scientist, to try to figure out the universe, to try to figure out things, not operating on faith and belief or tradition, So you'll see scientists, they'll often eschew tradition, eschew faith, and they'll say, I only believe in what I can prove, and here's the things that I can prove. So that turns a lot of people off. They see scientists as being very, very evil for that alone. Because they eschew tradition, because they eschew faith and belief. But they often are come across as being atheistic. They're against the good. To be against God is to be against good. If you believe that God is all good, and and you have a character like the high evolutionary who says God doesn't exist, well, you're saying that the all good doesn't exist. And he says that I'm stepping in to take his place. You're putting yourself as the all good, which is like the ultimate in egotism. But when you understand that a lot of scientists, they do take that position. Now, I'm not going to say all of them, of course, but there's a good number of them. Like for a long time, there's been the idea of the people who pushed uh, the atheism, taking prayer out of school, and all that kind of stuff. A lot of it was scientists, people who believed in evolution, who believe in the Big Bang, and all that kind of stuff. You even see people who try to say, okay, well, there's both. You see a lot of maybe scientific priests sometimes, and they exist, who say, okay, but none of these things mean that God doesn't exist. That God didn't create evolution, and God didn't create the Big Bang or whatever. And often, what you'll see is a complete and total rejection of even that. From some of the more hardcore scientific types, they'll reject even that bridge of, hey, we can all work together. We can say both of these things are true. They look at it as you holding on to the last shred of your belief, and you shouldn't believe in things that you can't see and hear and experience or whatever. They're hyper focused on the material world, which is something that, especially if you're a Christian, doesn't really concern you too much, because Christians are already told to not really concern themselves with the material world. Be not of this world, you know. But scientists are of this world. They study this world. They study these people, and in those studies, they often run experiments or tests, sometimes even against people's will, which is why they have to put in certain rules and laws against scientists operating on people against their will, or taking people who have really low IQs, who don't really understand what they're signing up for, and operating on them. It becomes that sort of system. And you also see that scientists, when they think that they figure something out, they start demanding that is accepted by everybody as truth, and at the expense of even sometimes actual truth, or sometimes again tradition or belief. And some people are going to say, well, tradition or belief that is wrong should be eliminated, should be ignored. But then you get a society that is godless and lost, where everybody's essentially their own little god, in control of their own little universe, and they are, rampant in egotism and rampant in narcissism, and don't believe in anything other than themselves and the power of themselves, and thus they end up causing more problems than really in reality, because the only way they could possibly fail is if it's somebody else's fault. So it's a really good peek into our current society. Our acceptance of science. I'm not going to say science is bad. I don't believe that at all. But the acceptance of science in a way of eschewing tradition and eschewing belief and faith, what you get is everybody's an atomized little god who is going to be in control over, for starters, there's no moral center. So oftentimes you'll have to ask, the scientist, what's his moral center? When do you think that it's right to operate on people or not? And then you'll see in the history books, of course, as we see science over time, the moral part of it is evolving. So you'll see in the past that they operated on slaves, removed their teeth with no anesthesia, chopped off their limbs sometimes instead of, when it without any anesthesia or something like that. Sometimes it just wasn't possible. Other times it was entirely possible, but they was trying to look for something else. You'll see something like the Tuskegee experiment where people seem to think they were giving people syphilis. It's like, no, they were refusing to cure syphilis because they needed a control group. So that's evil, you know? The idea that you allowed people to suffer so that you could see what the outcome is pure evil. And there's tons of that kind of stuff in history when it comes to science. Now, again, science is not evil. Science has made our world so much better because the more we understand it, the easier our lives can be. At the same time, though, we have to understand that our experiments come with a cost, you know? And as we try to make our society better, it comes with a cost. It costs. We're thinking about in today's world. We're thinking about it in terms of jobs. Tucker Carlson is arguing with Ben Shapiro about self-driving cars and how self-driving cars are going to put truckers out of business. You've got the writers in Hollywood. They're worried about AI writing scripts without human hands. Some artists are worried about AI art and how it could put them out of business. So we're looking at ways in which science can make human beings completely and totally irrelevant. And for some people, they see that and they say, my God, why would you even create that? Why would you create something that will cost me my job, cost me my life? Because we're not too concerned about experiments anymore. Even though we did just have a major experiment recently. I'm not going to say what it was because I don't want to get like roasted on Twitter, but I'm not on Twitter, but like roasted via the YouTube gods. But you guys know what I mean, right? Where you had something that didn't go through proper trials for the right amount of time, and it became, well, let's just dump it into society and let's see what happens. Now you have more athletes having cardio problems, talking about heart problems, far more than usual, and you're seeing soccer players collapse on the field. You're seeing basketball players, football players collapse because we believed in the science without thinking about, the basics, tradition, belief. We ignored those things. We demonized people. We took their lives from them because they eschewed our view of a scientific world. There's also a belief that, science you can create, which you can. You can create things in science, but the best kind of science is an observation. It is teaching us how the things around us that we already know exist, how can it be explained? What are things made of? Can we make more of it? Some people will buy into GMO food. We have a growing population on Earth. Some people say, well, there's not enough farms, there's not enough this, that's not enough that. It's all bullshit anyway. Overpopulation is a myth. But we are going to end up having food problems because you got the Chinese and gigantic organizations buying tons of farms, and they're going to control the food supply. So they're tinkering with creating genetically modified food. So then you start getting genetically modified meatless hamburgers, meatless chicken wings. Like, how is this stuff existing outside of being created in a lab? Somebody's got to create this and try to copy the texture and flavor of a chicken wing so that you will be comfortable eating it. That's a positive and a negative. It's a positive because if we can create that, we can mass produce it. Therefore, eventually it will become cheap and we can give it to more people, and therefore we can deal with the food crisis that's going to be upcoming. It's a bad thing because it's not fucking real food. Okay, so you never know what the outcomes will be. When you look at processed sugar, it was a good thing because we was able to get more sugar without, having more slaves or anything like that. So then we created corn syrup and just made everybody fat. So, now corn syrup is in every damn thing, and our society is heavily overweight because corn syrup is in everything. So you gotta look at everything in terms of a double-edged sword. But the idea that science is evil, with Neil deGrasse Tyson, one of the things like science can do great things. Like, yeah, they can, but at what cost? What is the cost of creating better stuff? We created cosmetic surgery in order to help people who were like burn victims or who are born with cleft lip or suffered serious injuries from war or fight or whatever. And that has turned into, well, I just don't like my nose. I'm going to get a nose job. So now you have these people running around here with 14 nose jobs, the Michael Jackson syndrome, right? And then it goes to people who want to look like Barbie dolls, change their cheekbones, change their face. People who want to get gigantic breasts, just cause. People who want to, do all sorts of weird things to their bodies. And now we've gotten to the point where through technology, we can get people to believe that they're the opposite sex. At what cost did we create this? And it started out as a good thing. It definitely started out as a good thing. But where has it spun off to? Where was the brakes on this thing? Where did we say, okay, is enough is enough? And this is where you get a character like the High Evolutionary, and you look at him and you say, yeah, man, wouldn't it be cool if like all the animals around you could speak with like their own voices? What would a pigeon or an eagle or whatever say? What would they think if you were to tweak their brain or give them a brain? Like we're doing that with animal. We're creating animal hybrids in labs right now. We're trying to figure out how we can get mammalic creatures like mice or humans to regrow limbs, like certain lizards and stuff can do. We're trying to figure out how we can get that to work. That this is something we've been working on for a long time because Spider-Man has a villain, the Lizard, who was working on this, and he was created in like the 60s, right? This stuff's been going on for a long time. This general idea that with science we can help improve people's lives, and pretty much every cyborg story starts out that way. With science, we can make people's lives so much better. We can give the warriors who lost their arms and legs, we can give them back their arms and legs. And soon, those arms and legs turn into gun arms, like Barrett from Final Fantasy VII, or you can shoot rockets from your knees or whatever. Or if you saw that movie, it wasn't a Tarantino movie. It was one of those grindhouse films where the chick had like a gun leg. Like those things, they are inevitable in a society that that goes that way. I don't know if you guys ever seen this movie called Repo Man. It's a Forrest Whitaker movie where you can get organs that are artificial, like artificial lungs, artificial heart, or whatever, but you have to continuously pay on it. And if you don't pay for it, they have to repossess it. They have to cut your body open and take your lung out, take your heart out, or whatever. It's a nightmarish story, but we will get there eventually. Eventually we will be able to give people prosthetic hearts, prosthetic lungs, prosthetic kidneys, and it will save people's lives. Absolutely. But then we're going to have to ask the question: what if you can't afford it? What if you could afford it, but you couldn't afford it in 4 months? So now you got this thing. It's keeping you alive, but now you can't afford it anymore. How are we going to get it back? We're going to write a law that says that you can't take back your own property? And that's what we mean by science is evil. Because we try to fix things. They start out good, but as they say, the road to hell is always paved with good intention. And because somebody's going to have to come up with a certain way, and they're going to take it to the left, and there's no boundary. Again, there is the eschewing of tradition, the eschewing of beliefs, and understanding that certain things should not be done. You know, and a lot of people are against basic cosmetic surgery, so they're definitely against a lot of the transgender surgery. You know, a lot of people are like a lot of religions. They don't even let you get blood transfusion. You know, that could be an easy way to save somebody's life, a blood transfusion. And they're against it. They're like, no, no blood transfusion, no way. No, you know, how many people are against like donating organs, which you could save somebody's life, but they're worried about organ harvesting because it actually occurs. You know, you know, it actually occurs that people will kill you and steal your organs from you. So that's definitely something to consider. So when you have an enemy like the high evolutionary, you're coming to the idea that you have this godless, amoral, vicious dude who cannot be stopped by anything. You can't make a rational argument to stop him because he's beyond that point. You can't make a moral argument to stop him because he doesn't really believe that what he's doing is morally wrong. In fact, he believes it's morally correct because he's creating a society that is without fear or pain or war or anything like that. That's generally the idea. If you talk to people, they'll say, I'm against war. He's creating a species of beings that will not engage in war. Wouldn't that be great if we could create a species of creature that doesn't fight, that doesn't kill? Wouldn't that be great? Well, it depends, you know. What are you doing to their brain? Because every animal creature that we can think of has aggressive instincts. Every single one. A rabbit will bite you, you know. Almost every animal creature will attack you at some point, especially if they're, I mean, it might not be the first thing they go for, but they have an aggressive instinct. How can you get that out of them without tinkering with their brains and changing their instinct? Moving into the realm of the unnatural. And as we do more and more things that are unnatural, people start to see that as being amoral, as being, and sometimes even crossing over into the immoral. And that's something that I like to think about. So I like this. I like the character. It's easy to just say it's eugenics, and eugenics is evil. But eugenics is not evil. You know, ask anybody: would you rather have a kid with Down syndrome, or would you not? Most people would rather not have a child with Down syndrome. And if they could push a button to not have a child with Down syndrome, they push that button. And guess what? You would not be a bad person for thinking that. But people with Down syndrome do exist. Do they have a right to live? That's the abortion question. Let's say you have a machine and you can create and you can figure out during the pregnancy that this child has Down syndrome. Should you have the right to abort that child? Some people will say, hey, I'm against abortion, but bringing somebody into the world that, you know, going to feel nothing but pain, that's immoral, you know? So in a way, the machine could spare people tons of money in medical costs, you know, and emotional damage, because you could just abort somebody that you feel is, I guess, I don't want to say subhuman, but somebody who doesn't have a good quality of life. But you also look at it from the other direction too, like the grandmas and the grandpas who are 90 years old. Their brain is essentially shredded from dementia or Parkinson's or something like that. You know, we have ways of putting them down, of making them at peace, putting them, it's a mercy killing in a way. But then there's people who are sitting in the middle of this saying, okay, when do we stop? When do we stop? You know, what is the end point And that, of course, takes me to I don't want to go into too much detail about it, but the Tim Pool, Lance from the Surfs, that conversation, you know, about abortion. I looked at it, and look, I have a very low tolerance for the kind of mental pollution that the Surfs involves themselves with. A lot of the pedantic arguments and a lot of the dumb shit that they say. I just don't have the patience for it. It's not consistent. It's not moral. It's not even really to a point you really don't even understand it on principle. It doesn't even make sense sometimes. So you're just in a position where you're just dealing with people who are telling you lighting your own house on fire is good for the neighborhood. It's like, well, no, and you continually entertaining that is actually doing you damage. And that's when you realize that there are certain people who exist in the world who are nothing but a distraction. They're not actually going to fix the issue or even help with an issue. They got no answer. They're the guy who takes his chewing gum and sticks it under the desk. You know, he's the guy who throws the monkey wrench in the machine. He's the guy who's trying to sabotage the political argument. He's got nothing that's actually going to help you in this sort of subject. Even if I disagree with somebody, it'll be one thing if I can say, I see it from your perspective. I disagree with it, but at least your perspective is clear, and at least your perspective is consistent. When he starts talking about aborting babies even after the baby could be born, just taking the baby out because the mom don't want the baby in there anymore. Okay, you take the baby out. Okay, now the baby's a whole different person. Well, you have to kill it anyway. You're like, wait a minute, that's ridiculous. Why are we even entertaining this conversation? Okay, it's a different person. Clearly, there's no confusion. Once you cut the umbilical cord, it's a different person. It's no longer even attached to her body. This conversation about what you should do with a different person shouldn't even be had. We shouldn't even be entertaining that conversation. It's stupid to continue that line of reason because now we're just going into murder, right? And most people, even 10 years ago, would have believed that. But because we played the scientific argument and it's a part of her body, which technically the baby is for a while, a part of her body is connected to her literally at the umbilical cord. It's literally feeding off of her. And she should be able to control that. Okay. Even if I accepted that argument as a reason for, abortion, once you start talking about, hey, the baby's viable, 8-9 months, we can just remove the baby at that point. You don't want to be pregnant anymore? Okay, we'll remove the baby. But, you should kill the baby anyway, because that's what I want. It's like, the baby will live on its own. We'll just remove him. And you can go about your day. We'll put the baby in an orphanage or something like that. You don't get to make a decision at that point. I think abortion should be also abortion of her right. You say you want to abort the fetus. You sign some paperwork saying you want to abort the fetus. If the fetus lives, or if the fetus is viable outside the body, you abort your right to make a decision on that child at that point, right? Because you essentially signed your rights away. But that's how science can be a double-edged sword, because we do realize that sometimes in the later months of pregnancy, it can still be dangerous for moms. But we got this idea that a zygote is somehow not human, like two humans who have sex and sperm penetrates an egg and somehow creates something that's not human. Like, when they start denying the humanity of a fetus because it's not the kind of human that they think matters, then you just follow that logic all the way down. There is a piece of humanity that they think does not matter. And you just follow that logic all the way down. Of course, it's eugenics. It doesn't make any sense to say it any other way. But I don't know how I got on this subject. I'm just ranting now. But the movie was good. Okay, I enjoyed the movie. It was a good ending. I definitely thought it was better than 2. I hated Guardians of the Galaxy 2 because I didn't like Ego. Ego being Quill's father, but also being quote unquote the living planet. That's dumb. That's dumb. You know, Quill's father is basically a space king. Why couldn't he just be a space king? Why do he have to be this godlike planet thing with special powers? And then Quill's got special powers, but now you have to explain why Quill doesn't have special powers and the rest. He didn't have any before, and why he doesn't have any in the later series, but he got some in two. It's dumb. So I hated Guardians of the Galaxy 2. So 3 felt good. You know, it felt like the team was back. Um, it was a little dry in certain places, like some of the performances was a little dry. But overall, I think the movie was pretty good. All right, let's do the David Mamet questions, and then we can move on to something else. All right. So, where is my? Oh, there it is. Okay. What does your hero want? Well, you got multiple heroes in Guardians of the Galaxy. Most of them coalesce around the idea of wanting to save Rocket, and therefore they must confront Rocket's creator. They must find out what they can about Rocket and confront his creator. So that's what the heroes want, and pretty much all of them want. What stands in their way? Well, there's the High Evolutionary with his army of cyborgs and hybrids, and there's Adam Warlock and whatever kind of creature he turns out to be. Then there is, of course, the internal conflict of the Guardians of the Galaxy with Gamora, and with Nebula and Drax and Nebula and Mantis. They're constantly arguing throughout the movie. Third, what happens if they don't get it? Well, it's clear that Rocket would probably die if they don't figure out how to turn off the kill switch in his chest. And they will lose an important member of their family. Because family is a good theme here, this is reason enough to really go on the adventure. Because you're looking at him as he as important as anybody or anything. He's elevated to a level of not just he's a living organism, but he's an important living organism to us. And why now? The fourth question, why now? Well, the story kicks in with Adam Warlock attacking Rocket and trying to kidnap him, on behalf of the High Evolutionary. And this is what ends up causing the damage to Rocket. It almost kills him and kicks off the story in the beginning. So it kind of creates this sort of cycle that why now is feeding into what does your hero want. So I think it's a pretty good story. I think James Gunn did a good job here. Visually, it was pleasing. I didn't really see it and see it was crappy. I thought the action was pretty good. I would have liked for them to sort of tie up the Gamora Quill thing a little bit better than they did. I didn't like it. I mean, there was something they started in the third movie. In the first movie that I don't feel like they finished. So I thought that was kind of fucked. But other than that, I think Guardians of the Galaxy was a very good movie. I think it was very solid. So I would suggest people go and see it. I would suggest you if you went to go see Ant-Man, you should have seen Guardians of the Galaxy already, because Ant-Man was real dumb. It was a dumb fucking movie. It was dumb. And the guy who plays the High Evolutionary, he was really good. I would have liked for him to be a little bit less animated, but a little bit more stoic. But I was okay with his rendition of the High Evolutionary. It was actually pretty good. Also, I did watch Ant-Man, Quantumania. I just had some free time. I had free time and I put it on, and I think I started kind of glazing out before they even really got into the quantum realm, really. I ended up watching the whole movie, but when they got to the part where they were making fun of MODOK and his little legs and everything, I was like, this is an unserious movie. And I just kind of peeked at the screen every once in a while as I was watching it, but I didn't really take it seriously. So, I like that this movie, at the very least, took the villain seriously. Even though I know Kang was the big bad in Ant-Man. just the fact that the way they treated Modoc was kind of a turn off for me. I was like, okay, whatever. You're not taking the movie seriously. You're taking away all the threat of these characters. I don't care. And then you had Kane get killed by a stampede of ants. I'm like, oh my god, turn this shit off, please. This stupid fucking movie. But thankfully, I was doing something else. I think I was reading comics or something like that, so I wasn't really paying that much attention to it. So I didn't really waste my time. I just kind of peeked at it every once in a while. So that's your Ant-Man review. The movie was dumb. Okay, so let's talk about the WGA writer's strike before I get into Free Comic Book Day. We're gonna end on the fun note. We're gonna talk about Free Comic Book Day last. All right, so those of you who don't know, Hollywood is on strike. Um, Now it's not exactly Hollywood that's on strike. It is the Writers Guild of America that is on strike. And why are they on strike? Well, for starters, I want to be upfront and honest about my biases. I do not like unions. I don't like unions. They suck. Writers unions is even dumber, really, because why do you need a union for writers? I don't know, but whatever. So they've been on strike since May the 2nd. It is now May 7th. The WGA, they have been in negotiations with the Hollywood studios, and there was about 6 or 7 things that the Hollywood studios rejected from the WGA. I'm not going to give you any details because I don't want to get bogged down in percentages and stuff like that. But here's some of the things that they wanted. They wanted residuals for streaming services based on viewership. They wanted high budget programs made for streaming services to get weekly TV weeklies and script feeds. They also wanted script feeds. They also wanted improved residuals on that. They wanted a complete and total ban on artificial intelligence scripting. They did not want artificial intelligence scripts to be used as a baseline or to be used to write or rewrite materials. They wanted pre and post greenlight rooms and to dictate the numbers of writers necessary for individual series. They wanted mandatory minimum number of writers on pre-greenlight series and post-greenlight series. And what this actually included that they wanted 10 consecutive weeks of work, which is, for a pre-greenlight series. Pre-greenlight means before the show was picked up. That means you have to work at least 10 weeks before the show is even picked up, which is odd. There was an article that says that the proposals that the Writers Guild of America pushed forward would amount to about $429 million per year. All of these demands or suggestions were denied. Now there were other things that they wanted that were countered. This is a negotiation, so it was basically a counter offer made. But these things were completely rejected outright, and so the strike took place. Entertainment Weekly, or the Entertainment Weekly, Collider, on May 4th says that Hollywood has lost like $10 billion that day. But that's all in stock market value and will probably be returned after the strike is over. So, in talking about the strike, the last time there was a big strike was about in 2007, 2008, when they had a big strike. And as most people realized and most people talked about, what ended up happening is you started having more reality TV in order to fill the gap, because they don't really require too many writers. So you find ways to replace the writers. And so what you end up having is, right now, a lot of the shows like Stranger Things and some other shows have been shut down, at least temporarily, until the writer's strike is over. And a lot of actors are joining the picket line because, never miss an opportunity to virtue signal. And so it's a new thing for them to say that they're for, So a lot of the actors are joining the picket line with the writers or whatever. not really realizing that what actually one of the things that they didn't want is one of the things that's actually going to start occurring. As when they went on strike, some studios just pivoted to AI writing. They decided, well, you guys are worried about artificial intelligence writing scripts. That's what we're going to do. We're going to have artificial intelligence write scripts. Those things are going to be pretty terrible, by the way, because they're going to lack all human thought and human emotions. Like there are certain things that computers just cannot do yet. They can't mimic human emotion yet. So they're going to write some really lifeless stuff. I can just feel it coming. Um, so they are going to end up maybe losing some jobs anyway through either a pivot in content in terms of they're going to start going more into content that doesn't really require a lot of writers or writing in general in order to fill that time. They're also going to probably replace some of them with artificial intelligence, which is one of the things again they was arguing about. The real reason that they probably should not be um, asking for more residuals, let's say, from the streaming services. The reason why they shouldn't be on strike right now is that according to TV Tech, there has been over $100 billion in losses in terms of streaming services. That's just in piracy. In streaming services in general, there's been $20 billion across all the streaming services. That's how much money they lost. Some of the big losers: Peacock lost $1 billion, Disney lost $500 million, Paramount lost $511 million, Warner Brothers lost $217 million. Apple and Amazon, they did not record their losses, but their streaming services are indeed loss leaders for them. This is not the time for you to walk up and demand more money when they're bleeding money on these streaming services. That means that the stuff that you've been writing for the last several years has not found an audience, has not caught on, and is losing money. So then you're going to go to these people who are already losing money and say, well, I want more money. And I want you to pay me based on the viewership of this series, which all seems fair. If the series turns into some kind of hit series, like a Stranger Things, then it makes sense. But if your show is going to get canceled by Netflix before the first season is even over, then it doesn't really do you any good. Okay? But ultimately, look, this is really exposing how bad TV is. Okay? Most TV shows have been losers for a long time anyway. That's just how everything works. I think I've explained this to you guys before. If you haven't, let me explain again. The large majority of any industry is losers. All right. Books, comic books, video games, pro wrestlers, football players, the vast majority of them actually cost you money. Musicians are a big one. Actors is another one. The vast majority of these people actually cost you money. They do not make you money. All right. So what they're looking for is a Stranger Things that people will watch, and that will be the central show, and that will carry the streaming service forward as they also have all of these other failures that pop up and go away every once in a while. So everybody's chasing a hit, essentially. Just like in the music business, everybody's chasing a hit. Some people get a hit, some people don't. But you have to spend money to make these programs. And then these programs don't make any money. So these people who are going on strike, how many of them have actually written anything that was any good? As WG Fields said, a lot of them have written crap over the last several years. And that's even before I start talking about the incessant politics of this whole ordeal. How many times have people just been lazy and said, well, I'm just going to write this character as Trump. I'm going to write this character as Elon Musk. I'm going to write this character as Ron DeSantis because why not? You know, people following, everybody following the same mold. That's the problem with the union. You know, everybody's following the same mold. Everybody's speaking with one voice because the writers have a monopoly on labor. So because you have a monopoly on labor, you get these entitlements. They think they deserve all this kind of stuff individually. The writers of Stranger Things probably could have gotten all this stuff if they wanted it because Stranger Things is such a huge hit. So if you was working on that show, you probably could have gotten residuals on that show. You probably could have gotten, we're not going to use AI to write this show because you guys are doing such a good job. But now you're collectivizing the people who write Stranger Things and the people who write some stupid show that got 6 episodes on Paramount that nobody knows that it exists. You know, you got people who have been writing a hit TV show that people actually like and cared about and talk about over the water cooler versus a show that bombed. You know, and they're all being lumped collectively together. It's like, no, you cannot do that. It does not work that way. Each one of these companies, I did not say they all lost the same amount of money. They're all losing different amounts of money. They all are different sizes. All of these are different costs. They have different things attached to them. You cannot approach all of these organizations that have drastically different needs with a one-size-fits-all policy answer. This is a terrible idea, and the unions do this shit all the fucking time because this is the idea behind unions. This is how they bankrupted Detroit. Some auto companies do better than others, but you can only really talk to the UAW. You don't have any other options. So companies that's doing good, like I guess GM or Ford or something like that. Actually, not GM, Ford. Okay, who are doing okay. And then you have GM and you got Dallas Chrysler, we called it for a long time. They are doing different stuff. Tesla, they make a different kind of car. They make hybrid vehicles and all this kind of stuff. Everybody's different. You can't come with a one-size-fits-all policy that's going to cover every company, regardless of what that workforce looks like, regardless of where that workforce lives. It doesn't make sense. You know? Anytime somebody tries to come to you with a one-size-fits-all answer, it's the wrong answer. It completely and totally negates your individualism. You are an individual entity. You need an individual working relationship. And the shows need to be individually negotiated, if we're being honest. So a lot of these writers, they're Hollywood types. They're very, very entitled. They believe that they're owed all of these jobs. They're owed all of this money. They're losing out on opportunities. But in reality, most of them are not writing anything of note that is good anyway. You know, so many people are on the side of the writers and they don't watch all this crap that these writers have been making. If they did, these companies wouldn't be losing money. Like, how is Netflix, has so many hit television shows from like Squid Game to like Stranger Things, and it's still continuously to lose money? How is that? How can that happen? How could these streaming services have so many shows that people love to watch, like The Office, like Beavis and Butthead, like South Park, and all this kind of stuff, and they still manage to lose money? Part of it is because of how much money it takes to invest into the streaming service. That's part of it. But you have to create new content. And the content comes with a cost. They're starting to put big time actors in this content now. Like, they got Arnold Schwarzenegger in a TV show now. His first ever TV show. He's been in the business 40 years. He never did a TV show before. Now he's doing a TV show for Netflix. Samuel L. Jackson did a TV show for Netflix. Not for Netflix, I'm sorry, for Apple TV. Will Smith did it like does like movie exclusives. They were paying these guys $10-15 million to do these movies and stuff. So they wouldn't have to pay residuals on these movies and things like this. Like they started giving these guys lump sums up front, so they wouldn't have to pay them anything on the back end. But the writers want something on the back end. It's like I don't know, man. It ain't looking good. It ain't coming across as being very smart to me. But then again, I don't know the nooks and crannies of Hollywood writing and what the business is. And a lot of people are claiming, oh, we don't have a living wage. You live in fucking California. You guys keep creating new ways to increase your cost of living. So this is going to be a problem every few years. You're talking about $1.2 million in reparations to every black person in California or something like that. You don't think that's going to inflate your cost of living? You're going to go out here and do all this damn arguing and then go vote for some dumb shit that's going to increase your cost of living, and then you're going to be in the hole again in a couple of years. Now, I don't think that reparations bill is actually going to pass. It's just virtue signaling. But generally speaking, they do things that increase the cost of living. They block building of new apartments. They allow crime to run rampant. And then they complain that they can't afford shit. It's like, hey, dumbass, your cost of living is too high. It's not a problem of what you're being paid. Your problem is you choose to live in California because you like the lifestyle of being a big shot Hollywood writer. And because you're a big shot Hollywood writer, you feel like you should be able to live in a golden castle. When in reality, you probably don't need that kind of stuff. You probably just don't need it. And if you were any good, you wouldn't need a union, if we're being honest. You probably wouldn't need a union. You'd write things that people would want to see, and you wouldn't be able to block other people from doing the same. I think television would be so much better if we didn't have all these fucking unions. The writers unions and the music unions and the directors unions and the cameraman's got a union. It's like, God damn. Now, are you surprised the cost of everything has skyrocketed through the roof? Like the idea of somebody just waking up one day and creating their own movie is pretty much slim to none. Like I think Tubi has allowed people to do something like that, but usually they'll even block your distribution. These unions can block your distribution of your movie. So Tubi is opening up an opportunity. Like you hear about the Tubi movies. People are having opportunities because of the low cost of entry, as opposed to this Hollywood system that has been locked up for years and years by unions. So will the Writers Guild get what they want? Who knows? They might, but it's going to be one of the last gasps of this union and their power, because these companies, they're realizing that they don't really need these people. Again, the auto industry figured it out a long time ago. We can get monkeys to do some of the stuff that we're doing in these factories. We can get Mexicans to do them. We can get the Chinese to do it. And then they took that stuff to Mexico and China. And now look at Detroit. Look at Gary, Indiana. Look at Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Look at what they call the Rust Belt. It's dead because the unions hollowed out those industries by making outrageous demands. Now, would it have happened anyway? Maybe. But I can definitely say that the unions didn't help. They didn't keep manufacturing here. What ended up happening is they ran the manufacturers out by continuously making absurd demands. And Hollywood think it won't happen to them. But it is happening to them. It is. And as technology continues to grow, eventually AI will get good enough that they will be able to write a basic structure of a script, and then they're going to pay maybe a few people to go in and tweak things here and there, and add some human elements to it, and fix some of the pros, and that's going to be it. That's going to be the job. And they're arguing against that right now, but I can tell you pretty much in 10 years it's going to be a little bit going to be different. But what happens is the people love their virtue signaling and they love their strikes. Everybody, all these communists and these socialists and these union supporters, they love the strike. Oh Lord, they love that strike. They love to see people all out in the street doing nothing. How cute can they be with their signs? Who's going to come out there and give them pizza? That's what they like. They like the virtue signal. How can we make other people's lives miserable today? Through our mass hypnosis. These people just want to watch TV. They don't give a fuck about you. They just want to watch TV. Whether you write the show or not, they don't care. Well, you can take better care of the writers. We're like, no, how about the guy who wanted to write the show, but he didn't want to join the union, or he got fucked out of his job because he was a heterosexual white male? Or the chick who wanted to write the TV show, but she got fucked out of her job because she was a Christian? Or how about somebody who wanted to write the show, but they're out of fucking luck because they live in Nebraska? Maybe, just maybe, if we got rid of these fucking unions, we can get better TV shows. Then somebody in buttfuck Arkansas, can write a TV show that might be interesting, that pulls them out of poverty or something like that. And it'd be authentic, and it would matter, and it would resonate with people. And then we wouldn't have to deal with all these plastic bullshit TV shows. But then again, if you got rid of the union, you get rid of the unified message. And the unified message of LGBTQIA absolutism, the unified message of diversity, equity, and inclusion, because people would not be interested in that. They would just write shit that they like. It'd be like crazy guy runs around in space, fucking aliens and stealing gold coins or something like that. They wouldn't be too concerned at all about diversity, equity, and inclusion. They just write the shit that they was looking at, either growing up or what stuff they watched on TV. They'd be like some redneck somewhere writing his version of Transformers, which would be fun to a lot of people, but it wouldn't push the diversity, equity, and inclusion agenda. So they're not going to sit down and make it. But to be quite honest, you look at all this money these people are losing. Clearly, it's because the unified message is not resonating. People are not watching this stuff. And the stuff they are watching, they're pirating it. Lord knows that's what I'm doing. So maybe now is not the time to do this shit. But when it comes to these unions, man, I'm always questioning how people can support themselves by not working. So I fully expect that there's probably somebody funding this whole thing. All this stuff is artificial anyway. It's like the stuff in New York. I just saw a tweet earlier today about how artificial those protests in New York are. The people on the subway trains. I'm talking people who are clogging the subway and everything. And somebody noticed that the young lady who was putting the videos on Twitter, and she had like videos on MSNBC and all this kind of stuff. And she's not even from New York. She's from like Minneapolis, Minnesota or something like that. She was hired and brought in to film the protest, because she was a trusted, protest journalist or whatever the hell they called it. And so she was able to get close enough and to get in there. And basically it's a scheme. She gets to sell her footage to the mainstream media. She makes money. And they get their message out, and it's all AstroTurf, So I can tell you that there's probably nothing but AstroTurf behind these writer strikes too. There's probably some big money funders making sure those people don't go broke for every day that they don't work. You already got Hollywood celebrities out there feeding them and walking side by side with them, and the mainstream media is talking about, oh, they're not asking for a lot. It's like, look. You have no right to make demands on people if you are not, in any way discomforted. Like we're not talking about people making you sit on a bed of needles at work. You don't work in a fucking steel mine. You know, you don't. I mean, like a steel factory. You don't work in a coal mine. What the fuck do you need a union for? You sit in an office. You write. You can either write or not write. If you don't want to write about this show, you go write on another show. You let somebody else do it. What the fuck do you need a union for? Unions were created by people who could almost die at work, you know? And now they're the number one tool of the bourgeoisie class to argue about how they want more money from their bosses. And everybody else is supposed to feel sorry for them. I'm sorry, but I don't. I don't. I can't tell you when the last time I watched a television show that was new and was like, wow, this is an excellent. Well, I guess I could say twice. Tulsa King, Last Days of Ptolemy Gray. Now, Last Days of Ptolemy Gray is based on a book by Walter Mosley, so they don't get no credit for that. But Tulsa King was at least pretty good, and I think Sylvester Stallone pretty much wrote that himself. So those two, but all of these other shows that they keep making, I don't see that as being a good. So we're just probably going to end up seeing a lot of more RuPaul's Drag Race, more American Idol style stuff, more garbage TV. That doesn't need a lot of writers. A lot of people are saying like you might see more pro wrestling because pro wrestling, even though they have writers, they're not part of this union. So they're unaffected, and people. I saw a lot of people like roll their eyes when Nick Khan said that WWE is not affected by any writers union. So you may be talking about the expansion of wrestling and to fill the void in some of these TV shows that are disappearing. It's entirely possible, man. Who knows? Who knows what could happen out here? But I can tell you that whenever you do something like go on strike, it's a show of force, which is what these people like to virtue signal about. But ultimately, it creates a grumbling in the offices, and people are looking for ways to even if you win this round, they're looking for ways to replace you. They're looking for ways to force you out. They're gonna wait for that day to come where they don't have to capitulate, where they don't have to deal with this. And that day is when you're going to get kicked in your ball sack, when you're going to lose everything that you worked for because you were being a dickhead today. Instead of just saying, look, maybe I ain't good enough to be a writer. Writing doesn't pay enough. Maybe it needs to be a second job. Maybe I need to do it on the side. Not everything is meant to be a primary job anyway. Not everything is meant to be you can pay for your house with one job. That's not how it works. Sometimes you might have to do multiple things. Hell, you had some of the founding fathers of the United States that were both doctors and lawyers. They were lawyers and shipbuilders and shit like that. But you think, I work in Hollywood. That should be the only thing I do is show up, write a script, and get paid, and I should be able to go back to my mansion and kick my feet in my jacuzzi. Like, that's an entitlement. You created that vision in your head. That's if your show was really good, if you wrote fucking Sanford and Son or Seinfeld, then yeah, I see how you may envision yourself that way. But if you writing for a show that's going to get canceled in 2 weeks, and maybe you don't even know it yet, then no, you don't deserve to live with a jacuzzi and have a maid and a butler and have a mansion in Southern California. No, maybe being a writer is something that you like to do. It may be something that you're good enough to get a job at, but you're not ever going to make enough money to live off of that. So maybe you need to get a better job, get another job, and allow yourself, be humble, step aside, and let somebody else take the spot. All right, WG Field has thoughts about this. He says, why California getting reparations when California was founded in the 1840s? Part of it is because there's a general idea in the reparations movement that if you're a part of the United States in general, you should get You should have to pay reparations. Also, when you talk about California, they'll probably find some way that there's probably some slave owner or something in California somewhere. But the slave, the reparations argument, it gets more and more ridiculous as the day goes by. But there's a lot of states that never had, like Michigan never had legal slavery. We became a state just before the Civil War started. Michigan never had legal slavery. That doesn't mean that there weren't any slaves in Michigan. It just meant that slavery was never legal when Michigan became a state. It entered the Union as a free state. So generally speaking, nobody in Michigan should get reparations. But that doesn't stop them from talking about it. The conversation has just gotten poisonous and retarded. There's there's no consistency. There's no starting point really anyway. You know, how are you going to figure out who was a descendant of slaves and who came over 40 years ago? Whose Jamaican mama, jumped off an airplane and and she's not a descendant of slaves. Somebody might have Haitian parents, who came fresh off the boat 25 years ago. They're going to get reparations too, just because they're black. It doesn't make sense. But this stuff ain't about making sense. It's a power move. It's all about causing disruption, making people uncomfortable. That's what Marxism is all about. Marxism is not about fixing any problems. They'll tell you that themselves. Marxism is about critique. Well, I remember who was this? There was two people talking. There was, I think it was an economic conversation, or was it? No, it was a linguistic conversation. I believe it was John McWhorter and some Marxist. No, it wasn't John McWhorter. It was the guy who got slapped by David Schultz. What the fuck? What's his name? Right on the tip of my tongue. But he was debating a Marxist linguist. And all you need to know is that the Marxist linguist is, of course, talking about how America is endemically racist and all this kind of stuff. And then when he was confronted, he would just say, I use a Marxian worldview, which is basically it's a challenge of the status quo. It doesn't offer you any real responses or how to fix anything. It's just about this endless pedantic debate. That's really what it is. And it doesn't matter if their arguments are good or not, only that they try to point out the flaws in yours or point out the flaws in your system and make grandiose moral arguments about your system. So when you're dealing with Marxists, you're not talking about people who actually want to have any ideas about fixing anything. They only have issues about how to critique shit. So it's all about, it's not the man in the arena, as people have come to say. The man in the arena is actually trying to fix something. He's actually trying to solve a problem. He's actually trying to figure out what's going on. The Marxist just wants to stand there and yelp and talk about how this needs to be fixed and that needs to be fixed and this is racist and that's homo and heterosexual sexism and all this kind of stuff. And any kind of policy decision that they may be forced to make is all going to be about giving more power to the state or taking more money from the rich and implementing their envious, jealous policy ideas and destroying everything around them. But generally speaking, Marxism is not about anything other than quote unquote critique of capitalism or a critique of status quo, which is stupid. Who the fuck is going to entertain this endless critique? It's always good to double check your own beliefs and to point out where your system can be better fixed. But when it's endless critique to the point where it's completely destructive to your way of life, like the way California did to itself, the way cities like Detroit and Baltimore and parts of Philadelphia and Pittsburgh and all that kind of stuff, they destroyed themselves because they dealt with the old Marxism. You're never comfortable. Nothing is never good enough. Everything has got to be going towards utopia. It's like the high evolutionary all over again. We're trying to make a perfect workplace. And in pursuit of the perfect workplace, you end up running the whole fucking workplace off. you know, like your boss is not going to be perfect. All right, the workplace is never going to be perfect. It can only be, are you near death? No. Are you facing some kind of physical pain, punishment, or discomfort? If the answer is yes, then okay, that's something to deal with. If no, then we can move on. If it's financial, then get the skills and move on to a different job that may be in the same industry but maybe pays a little more once you get your skills up. Because some of this stuff is a skills issue, but it's not. It's just endless critique. It's who controls the thermostat in the office. The women who have low iron, they're always cold. The men wear long sleeve shirts. The women want to wear skirts in the office. If you don't change it, the women will complain it's sexism, so they get to control the thermostat, and everybody else just grumbles. And the men are now hot all the time, but they can't wear shorts, and they can't wear short sleeve shirts, so they're miserable. But they can't complain about sexism. So what are you gonna do? And that's kind of the system that we end up in now, where the person who has the law given right to complain is the only one who can complain. WG Phil says, if these big shot Hollywood writers lived in the South, they would live like a king. Yeah, if they got their asses out of California, they would be fine. But they want to live amongst the celebrities and they think that they should be celebrities. That's not how this works. So anybody who lives in California, I don't know. Unless you just really, really, really like the weather, you should probably just leave California. Like, I don't understand what you're working for. Like, San Francisco and Los Angeles are so fucked. They're worse. I mean, in certain elements, they're worse than Detroit. Like we have people, they have a sizable mental illness population, a sizable homeless population. But when you look at Detroit, you look at lack of investment. You're looking at abandoned buildings. You're looking at burned out places from the riots that were never reinvested in. And this stuff's been going on for 30 years. When you're looking at California, you're looking at a place that all of their wounds are self-inflicted. Now, Detroit's wounds are self-inflicted too. But you're talking about where they don't enforce the law in terms of people shitting in the street or using drugs, and therefore they're deteriorating their own society. They're just doing it on purpose because they believe that it's better for somebody to shit on the street than it is for you to put them in a mental hospital, or to arrest them for defecating in the street. It's better for them to just shit in the street and nod off from heroin because that's better. And then of course it's the same thing that happens in Detroit where the property values plummet, and but since they're giving away free stuff, the cost of living keeps going up. And it's no different. You're inflating your currency as you give away more shit, as you create more entitlement programs. You give away more land to these universities so they can do more diversity programs and all this kind of stuff. You're doing nothing but doing damage to yourself. WG Phil, if they are striking, you should ask these companies if they're hiring. Well, technically, a lot of these companies they can't hire anybody because the unions have a monopoly on labor. So technically, I think that there can be scabs, quote unquote, that they call them. But I don't think they would. I don't think there's enough of them. Let's put it like that. But they need to open the market back up. I mean, this is an opportunity where if these companies don't like this union, they should just say, man, we want to opt out. We're opting out. We're going to do our own thing. We're opening up and we're taking scripts from anybody who wants to send us a script, And they'll get scripts from fucking Hong Kong. They'll get them from the Philippines. They'll get them from people who actually have been, spending their time writing scripts, but they'll never actually be able to move to California to have a meeting with somebody at Paramount or something like that. They'll never actually get to do that. They'll get them from all over the world. It was similar in the comic book industry when the comic book writers, they left the Foreign Image Comics. It was kind of like a union pool. It was a power move. It worked for them for a little bit, But over time, the comic book companies started to basically say, "Fuck these artists. Why should we continue to capitulate to these guys? And then they started outsourcing. So they started looking for artists in Europe and in South America. Then they started doing the same thing with the writers. And now you see quality, now even though they were finding quality writers and quality artists in other countries, now they getting so cheap they're not even looking for quality writers and artists from other countries anymore. They rather just hire the bums that are in New York right now because at least this guy is my friend. And that's kind of how these industries are going now. It's becoming almost nepotism. So I don't think anybody can get in there if they wanted to. WG Phil says, I honestly think they should consider the stimulus checks reparations and call it a day. I think if they wanted to give a reparations, what they shouldn't do is make it a giveaway. What they should do is make it an exception. For instance, let's say you eliminate income tax or property tax for people who are descendants of slaves, just like you do Native Americans. Like Native Americans, they don't get reparations, but they live tax free. They live on now they do live on reservations, and the reservations are controlled by the federal government, which is why they're also fucking poor. But if you say, all right, all the descendants of slaves don't have to pay income taxes or don't have to pay property taxes, that's still unfair. It's demonstrably unfair, but it will allow people to create their own wealth. You'll be able to get a paycheck and actually get the full amount of your fucking paycheck. So you may be able to maybe actually do more with your life. But then it'll be like, okay, why stop there? Which is the problem with the reparations bills is that it comes from, we want to give people money directly, cash payment, but we also want to do all of this other stuff too. Like we want to fund HBCUs, and we also want to fund local community centers and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, look, you ain't got the money for all this shit. All right. So to me, it seems kind of goofy, but it's California. They're gonna do whatever they want, and it's New York. It's places like that. They're gonna do whatever they want. And they're gonna end up running they're already running themselves into the ground, but California has been blessed that so many wealthy people live in there, and they have such good weather because what they've been doing the past 20 to 30 years, it wouldn't fly in like a cold weather, well, in New York, because of the culture around New York and the culture around Los Angeles and Cupertino and San Francisco or whatever. People just want to be in those places. People just want to be in New York because you can't make it in the world if you're not in New York. It's just a entitlement that I'm from New York. I should have access to all of the millionaires and the billionaires and all of their money and all the opportunities that they can offer. The same thing in California, but not the best talent ain't always in California and New York. It's just who's the most convenient, who's kissing the most ass, who's got the right politics and all that other garbage. RAS is dropping in for a little while. I appreciate it. All right, so I talked about that crap. So let us discuss. Free Comic Book Day, because Free Comic Book Day was May the 6th, and there was the pool for Free Comic Book Day was actually pretty weak. I copped, let's see, the Free Comic Book Day of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which it was a two-part story. It was one part from Eric Burnham. It's based off of TMNT Saturday Morning Cartoon Adventures. It's basically the Saturday morning cartoon version of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And then the second part is Rise of the TMNT, which is, of course, the new version of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It's absolutely awful. This book is boring and it's stupid. I got Shadow Man Legacy, or Shadow Man Dark Legacy. It's a retelling of the Shadow Man. Shadow Man is a character from shit. What? It's a character from Valiant Comics. I have a couple of Shadow Man graphic novels. I have a couple of Shadow Man paperbacks too, floppies. This basically is a retelling of the Shadow Man's origin. It's a little different than I remember from some of the other. They since Valiant reboots every year or something thereabout, they're always tweaking these origins a little bit here and there. But this is basically, and they give you a little bit of Exo Manowar too. Um, that's going to be written by the Exo Manowar is going to be written by who is this? Uh, Michael Conrad and Becky Cloonan with art from Liam Sharp. Liam Sharp is tremendous. That's the best thing about this. I'm not really a big fan of Exo Manowar, but I know that Wes from Thinking Critically is. Um, I'm more of a Shadow Man guy, so this was written in art by Bob Hall. It was okay, um, kind of bland because I'm already familiar with the Shadow Man character. So I got that. I got the Frazetta verse. Uh, Basically, these characters were created by Frank Frazetta, so it's a three-part story. This got the Norseman, Dawn Attack, and the Mothman. Uh, it was boring. It was terrible. The art was decent in some of them, but for the most part, these are really boring stories. This is stupid. AJ3, did you hear they're making a Shadow Man game? The question is, they're making another Shadow Man game because Acclaim made the first one, and they used to own Valiant. They made a Shadow Man game, so they're making another one based off of this version of Shadow Man. If so, I'm interested. Um, they have a character called the Eternal Champion. That's kind of a rip off of Michael Moorcock's Eternal Champion too. It's actually okay. It's all right. Um, I got a floppy of the new Red Sonja. I'm sorry, I left it downstairs. But the writer is Thornbeck, Gorn Thornbeck or something like that. It's a two-part story. The first one is the beginning of Thornbeck or Grossbeck or whatever the name is. I think it's a her. She's been writing Thor. The same person who's writing Thor right now is going to be writing Red Sonja. I think his name is Thornbeck. I don't know. But I'm a big fan of like the Sword and Sorcery, Conan the Barbarian, Cole the Conqueror, Red Sonja. I'm a big fan of all of that stuff. So I get those essentially whenever. And the first part of the Red Sonja book was okay. It wasn't my style. It's not going to make me go and pick it up when Thornbeck takes over the series, but it was okay. The second part is a Roy Thomas classic Red Sonja story. I haven't read it all the way through yet, but that's definitely more my speed. But I definitely enjoyed picking that up just for the Roy Thomas story. I got Chojin X free comic book day version. It's a story and art by Sui Ishida, the creator of Tokyo Ghoul. I looked at the art. It's okay, but I didn't get why he has like a duck bill and he still has teeth underneath. Like I didn't really get it. And then the second part of the book is Rooster Fighter, which by Shu Sakaratani, and it's basically a rooster that is the protector of the world. So it was too stupid for me to take seriously. So that was also a waste of time. I got Conan the Barbarian, written by Jim Zub. It's going to be for Titan Comics since Marvel lost the license. That was actually pretty good. I actually liked the free comic book day version of Conan the Barbarian. I enjoyed that. I also have the free comic book day of Street Fighter. Usually the Street Fighter comics are absolutely unbeatable. Like usually you can't go wrong getting a Street Fighter comic. Unfortunately, the last maybe year or two, Street Fighter comics have fallen off a fucking cliff. The Cammy comic that came out not too long ago was no good. The Chun Li comic that came out not too long ago was no good. And this Free Comic Book Day Street Fighter 6 comic was no good. It's just boring, you know? It's just a boring type of shit. AJ3 says, what about Quantum Man and Woody? I never got into that either. I heard Christopher Priest wrote the original series, but I never really read them. Never really read Quantum Man. Let's see, what else did I get? I bought some stuff. Yeah, I bought some stuff. I think that's all the stuff I got for free. Yeah, that's all the stuff I got for free. Um, a lot of it was trash. This was a really poor, free comic book day. But as far as the stuff that I purchased, the stuff that was on my pull list that I was going to get, whether it was free comic book day or not, was Usagi Yojimbo and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the issue 2 of their crossover. I just finished reading that before I started this stream. It was very good. I like the Usagi Yojimbo. I like Usagi Yojimbo. I like TMNT. The crossover is a little slow in certain spots, but I'm generally enjoying Stan Sakai's take on the Turtles. I really like that. Also, another Turtles, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mighty Morphin Power Rangers number 5. That dropped. So this is the end of their second crossover with Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. This of course featured the Black Turtles, using holographic technology to appear black in public. Also with the Rangerized Turtles, where they have like power suits and everything, and they have mutated um, Power Rangers, like the Power Rangers or whatever, taking on the aspects of their animal. So like Billy was a Triceratops after being experimenting with the ooze, and it was very cool. And we had Krang, who was living inside of a Megazord. Like it ruled. Like that whole five issue run was pretty fucking good, man. Ryan Parrott was the writer. I forget who the, the artist was. I want to say Dan Mora, but I'm not sure. Um, but Ryan Parrott wrote it. It was very good. Ryan Parrott has been the guy who's been writing the Power Rangers comic book lately. I think he's about to finish up on the Power Rangers comic book, which is very unfortunate. But he's been very good. He had a good voice for all the characters involved. Um, I went to 2 different comic book shops because, again, I had my pull list somewhere else, and I went to do, but the place I do my pull list at, they didn't do like discounts for a free comic book day. They didn't have any like a special box of giveaways or nothing. They gave a tail for that. I can tell you that much. But I did. Oh yeah, I forgot. I got what is this? My Hero Academia, Volume 34. So we're nearing the end of this. I haven't finished it yet because I'm still reading other things. So it's just going to go in the stack of manga and other things that I haven't read yet. So that was all in my pull list. The extra stuff that I bought Walter Simonson's Orion. It's the second half of the series, so it's like a 6 to 12 or some 12 to 15 or something like that. And it was only $15, so it usually go for like 40. So I had to go ahead and cop that. I did. It's also on my stack of things that I will probably read at some point in the future, but it won't be anytime soon. I also have in my stack of things that I purchased from Free Comic Book Day, Lady Machina, Lady Mechanica, Volume 2. I got Volume 1, and I got Volume 3. I got 3, 4, 5, 7. And you got La Dama de la Muerte, which I think is 6, but I'm not sure. But I don't have one. I didn't have 1 and 2, so now I have 2. Lady Mechanica 2. Cost me $9, but if you get it off of Amazon or something like that, it costs you significantly more. So I went ahead and copied it then. I like Lady Mechanica. I really enjoy the art of Benitez here. Joe Benitez. M. Chin is usually the writer. I think it's a female writer. The Lady Mechanica series is usually pretty damn good. And I try to get the graphic novels rather than chase down the floppies because it's so independent that you better off just buying the trade than trying to figure out if you can get those individual as floppies. So I think that was it. But last time I had free comic book day, man, I picked up a lot of stuff. I was thinking about getting. Uh, there's a manga called Terraformers. Terraformers, I think it's called. They had the third volume in the series, but it was only like $5. I should have got it just for 5. But I was like, I really don't like having like volume 3 of a. I don't know how many volumes in this series, because if I like it, I got to go catch up. I got to go get 1 and 4 and 5, and it's a pain in the ass. Like right now, I'm still reading Hell's Paradise. I was reading this before I started this, Hell's Paradise Jigoraku. This has an anime now. I haven't started the anime until I finish the series. I'm not going to finish the series anytime soon because I got the first 6 volumes of a 12-volume series. I'm only on volume 5. So I still got those gigantic stacks of Attack on Titan over there. That stuff is not budged yet. I got more, No Guns Life. I finished volume 5. So I'm on volume 6. I gotta order the rest. I gotta order issues 9, 10, and 11 off of Amazon. And I'm gonna have to order 7 through 12 for Hell's Paradise, and probably have all that stuff delivered at the same time. Um, I think that's it for all the new stuff. Uh, I've had the first 2 of the Parasite hardcovers. I've had both of those sitting here forever. I haven't read either one of them yet. I have Eric of the P. Craig Russell Stormbringer from the Michael Moorcock Library. It's a hardcover. I haven't even begun reading this thing yet. It's in the stack of things that I haven't read. I still have Frank Miller's Ronin in the stack of things that I haven't read. I have a comic on Jack Johnson called Last on His Feet, which I haven't read. I have Judgment Day, Judge Dredd, Essentials, Garth Ennis. Haven't read that either. Still sitting there. I just have tons of shit, and I still got books that I haven't read. Like I bought the book on Minnesota Pro Wrestling. It's a book on the AWA. I haven't read it. I got it sitting on the top of my china cabinet. Still haven't read it. I've had that book forever. Those magazines that I got, those wrestling magazines that I got, I still haven't read those. I still haven't opened them yet. All those stacks of Conan the Barbarian magazines that I got from that place, I still haven't read those. I still have some Cole the Barbarian magazines too that I haven't read. I haven't finished Bill of Time yet. I'm at the end of it, so that'll be finished probably within the next couple of days. So I still have tons of stuff to read, and I read rather than spend a lot of time watching movies and shit. So I'm probably going to carve through a lot of this stuff pretty quickly. But I started really reading in my spare time, And I still read serious material. Like I still read uh like serious articles on public policy and stuff like that. Like people don't understand how I am pretty efficient on my time. You know, I don't waste time watching stupid TV shows. I rather get into things that I like. Like I have uh Doctor Strange. What is this? The Eternity War, the second part of the Marvel Masterwork. Steve Ditko, Stan Lee, Doctor Strange. I'm halfway through this thing. It's fucking amazing. Like these Marvel Masterworks are some of the best stuff you can spend your money on. I've got Black Panther. I've got the first Doctor Strange Marvel Masterworks. I got the first two Spider-Man Marvel Masterworks. I got the Fantastic Four Marvel Masterworks. I don't even like the Fantastic Four, but I love Kirby and Lee Fantastic Four. This shit's fucking good. I don't like modern Spider-Man comics, but Lee and Ditko Spider-Man is fucking good. You know, um, I wouldn't get the Avengers or Incredible Hulk or Thor. Those iterations of those characters I don't necessarily like, but y'all might like them. So I'm telling you, if you want to spend some money on Marvel, the Marvel Masterworks is the best way to go. You know, I think they released um, the Marvel Masterworks that features I want to say Kang, either Kang or the High Evolutionary. It was recent. It was released recently, but 60s, 70s Avengers ain't my bag exactly. So I really ain't fucking with it. That's like they got the Daredevil out there, but I really don't like Stan Lee Daredevil. Just, I like Frank Miller Daredevil. So I really didn't go back and get that. You know, I've read some of Stan Lee's Daredevil. It's a completely different character. I like the darker, grittier version of Daredevil. That's like I didn't like the Thor with the he changes into from one god to Thor. And I didn't like that, so I didn't really buy that stuff. But they got the Jack Kirby Thor, which is tremendous, the Marvel Masterworks form. But I'm trying to be a little bit more judicious. But there's one thing that I read every time I get it. I don't just put it in the stack and get to it later. Usually that's the newest manga that I get. Like I got volume 8 of the hardcover of Fist of the North Star. I read that joint as soon as I got it because I just love that joint. You know, that's an incredible series. Incredible series. Sakamoto Days, I read them joints as soon as I get them. Uh, so I got issue with volume 7. I just finished Succubus and Hitman. That shit is incredibly pornographic. Like it's really graphic. But I just finished volume 4. Momo the Blood Taker. Also issue volume 4. From the Red Fog. From the Red Fog is fucking amazing. And I just finished volume 4 of that too. From the Red Fog is definitely something that people should get on more. You know, because they did a real slick thing in that joint. One day, maybe when it seems like a lot of these series are about to be over because that's what it feels like. Like it feels like From the Red Fog and Momo the Blood Taker is about to end within the next couple of volumes. But those are very good. The Succubus and Hitman, that shit's basically corn, bro. Like I don't. It's weird to me. Like I'm engrossed in the art, and then you know there's some cheesecake in it. I didn't know it was going to be this sort of this crazy. Now we're kind of in it now. Let's just forget it. Same thing with Momo the Blood Taker. It kind of makes me uneasy that they have one of those Wally characters where she's thousands of years old, but she's still kind of undressed sometimes. You're like, I don't know about that. Prince Ali says, I'm still craving for an X-Men film. Hopefully Deadpool 3 can fill that spot. I wouldn't bank on it. I wouldn't bank on it. I think Deadpool 3 is going to be some bullshit. Personally. It's going to be made by Disney, so it's probably going to be dumb as fuck. AJ3. Do I have any horror comics? Well, technically yes. I have a couple of Vampirella magazines, which is pretty much the only Vampirella. I tried reading Vampirella floppies. They don't do anything for me. I like the old Warren Vampirella. You know, I like that stuff. I'm not really a horror comics guy though. You know, I think technically Attack on Titan is horror, so I got that. But typically, if it's got like monsters and shit in it, I forgot. Uh, what's the name? Peter Sinetti. His team, they putting out Wolf and Bat. So I have like the first 5 issues of Wolf and Batsy. So I have that. So those are the horror comics that I have really. Do I have any other horror comics? No, I just have a lot of sword and sorcery, a lot of manga. Um, yeah, I don't have a lot of horror. Helheim, I guess you could say is horror. I got one volume of that. I guess was it volume two? Yeah, volume two of Helheim. Rides of Helheim. It's about it's got like zombies and shit in it, I guess. Um, what else? Oh yeah, I forgot. I bought Silencer. I don't know if you guys were up on Silencer from Dark Knight's Metal, John Romita Jr., Victor Bogdanovich. Um, it was the black character they created when DC Comics was creating all those new characters. I already have the first 6 issues of this in floppy form. So I bought the graphic novel version because it'll be easier for me to read the story again in that form. Because I actually did. I loved it. I thought it was really good. But I'm never going to go sit through those floppies. You can forget that. It's the same thing when I bought Killmonger. I bought Killmonger in graphic novel form, even though I had the floppies for Killmonger. The difference is the floppies of Killmonger got water damage. I had a flood in my basement, and it water damaged a lot of my manga. Like my entire set of My Hero Academia up till like 26 or something like that got wet and ruined. And it's sitting here warped right now. I'm just pissed about it. Also, my Ryoko, I got 2 issues of Ryoko from Ildo. Is it Yoshimatsu? Both of those have been warped. I have a couple of warped comics. I just threw those out. Especially if they were cheap comics, like from Alterna or something like that. I just threw them out. So I can't throw out my whole My Hero Academia set. I just can't just chuck it out because it's water. Um, one day when I hit the lottery, I'm gonna repurchase all of that stuff and I'm gonna throw it out, throw out the work one. But until then, I'm stuck with them. But that's what made me take everything out of the basement and take it up to my room. That's why my room is so cluttered now. Because I took all my manga out of the basement where I had it and brought it all up to my room. So now I can barely move anything. But it was smart because now I don't have to worry about the basement flooding and ruining my shit anymore. Even though some of this stuff was in like the manga, like not the manga, I'm sorry, some of the comics were in plastic. They still got work. They got work through the plastic. Um, so I threw out the ones I didn't need. And now I still have to worry about like rain coming through the windows and which sucks. But I'm usually better about closing the windows and not letting anything that near the windows get wet. And I have smartly. But I got so much shit and it's on both walls. Like it's on both sides of my room. So I'll probably have to move all of this shit that's near the window on the other side of my bed. And that's not gonna be good. It's gonna box me in. I'm gonna go to sleep or have a young lady over here knock over anything off the wall. And I don't want that. So I'm gonna have to stay where it is and just keep the windows closed when it's raining. Um, um. Oh yeah, I bought those. I bought physical copies of Tim Hornbaker's Capital Revolution and National Wrestling Alliance books. I've already read those, but I read them in ebook form. I haven't read them in physical copies. So I'm going to buy some more books. I'm going to buy Negroes with Guns. Um, I'm going to buy that. I'm also going to go back. Like I said, I finished Alice in Wonderland. I didn't really like Alice in Wonderland. It's confusing stuff. But I finished it, so I want to read another classic book. Probably get Lord of the Flies. I know a lot of people have pushed that on me, so you have to read Lord of the Flies. So maybe I'll read that. But again, I'm reading everything. I got serious political books to read. I got wrestling history books. I got manga. I got comics. I got magazines. I got all kinds of shit. So I don't watch TV outside of Raw and wrestling. I don't watch TV. I'm usually in here, or if I'm watching something like trying to catch up on My Hero Academia and the anime or something like that. But sometimes I'll wait like a month before I go back to it so I can watch 4 or 5 episodes in a row and not have to worry about, oh, next week. And I'm just like, oh, I just watched a lot of that shit in a row. So, um, oh yeah, I have this book. I think I talked about this book before. It's about the 1967 riot in Detroit, hardcover. I bought this joint for myself for Christmas. I haven't even cracked the spine on it yet. Um, so I'm gonna read it eventually. Everything that I pick up, I'm gonna read eventually. It's just about whether I'm gonna get to it anytime soon or not. And as I'm probably not gonna, I'm gonna continue to pick up my weekly books. I'm trying to stop buying books in bulk because I don't like having like large piles of stuff that I haven't read. It makes it seem like I'm just collecting, just hoarding shit, you know? Because it's like, oh, you can't possibly read all that stuff. I'm like, man, I'm trying. Shit, you gotta go to work. You know, but ultimately, as soon as I come in, usually I'll I'll get started to read something, or I'll read something on one of my breaks or something like that. And occasionally, like this morning, I watched Backlash over because I was like, just watching the show for the do the review is one thing. Watching the show again, usually you have a more appreciation for it. But I find that I get essentially the same feeling watching it again as I watched it the first time. But you see more detail just, when you watch it again. But I love that. WG Still says, what's the best book to improve on writing stories? I'm kind of interested in getting the anatomy of stories. Well, it depends because there's a lot of books out there that can tell you how to write a story or what a story is or how these stories are structured. Something like seven basic plots might help you out a little bit. Something like Joseph Campbell, Hero with 1,000 Faces, might help you out a little bit. But mostly the thing that really should help you write and improve your stories is by reading. You know, like you learn about the structure of stories from reading more stories, and you can look at what works and what works for you, what catches your eye, and how to do it yourself. You know, like I follow a lot of guys who are into pulp on on Twitter, and they hate Joseph Campbell. But Joseph Campbell was mostly talking about mythology. He wasn't talking about the literature of his time. He was typically talking about ancient mythology and how those things work. And since I'm very extremely interested in in mythology, that's my bag. And I'm gonna go get those gigantic books from Joseph Campbell in a minute, and for nothing more than reference, so I can get some ideas from that book. It says no. It's called Seven Basic Plots. Seven Basic Plots. I think is it by Christopher Booker? I don't have a physical copy of it, so I can't tell you for sure. but it's called Seven Basic Plots. It tells you about all the most reoccurring plots in stories, and that can really help you out in the storytelling because you can decide when you start your story: is it a revenge story? Is it a quest? Is it a love story? You know, what elements typically goes into science fiction or fantasy or whatever. Um, of course, I'm not going to actually write the damn shit for you, but ultimately, you know, it'll give you an idea of what you want to do. AJ3 says, are you going to do an audiobook about your YouTube playlist about cultural vandalism someday? I was considering it, but I think there's probably other people who are going to beat me to it because they're far more dedicated to the culture wars than I am. I'm far more interested in um, shit that I like than shit that I don't like. So I'm not much of a culture warrior. Like I see the stuff, but I don't drill into it on detail. I don't, argue with Dan Slott on Twitter about the way he wrote Spider Man. I just say, Dan Slott Spider Man sucks, and I move on. So, but to me, I like I like the concept, and I like digging into the concept. And it was a thing where I actually considered, like, if I had not been reading the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mighty Morphin Power Rangers crossover when the whole thing popped up with the turtles being black, I probably would have been like, "What the fuck are they doing?" You know. Uh, but having, I knew it from issue one what they were doing, so it wasn't that much of a surprise to me. So when other people started to catch on, they were like, "Wait a minute, what's going on?" I was like, "Yeah, they explained that already. They explained that like 3 months ago. They already explained what was going on, and it's not that big a deal, really." Plus, it didn't really change their characters. It was just giving them a human face so they can hang out in Angel World with the Power Rangers. It wasn't like they all of a sudden became fans of rap music and you know they were still talking like themselves. They were still themselves. Uh, yeah, hit me up in the Discord, and I'll definitely be able to help you out a little bit more on some ideas because you never know. You might be able to get some ideas on how to because I'm already okay with how to write stories. My issue now is content. Like, what do you write about? You know. So now I'm like, you're never perfect. You're never going to be great. I still read stories and understand, marvel at the structure of them. Like I really like how Donald Goings writes novels. I really do. The grit that he puts in there, how he fleshes out the characters, how he uses his language. He's not considered like by anybody to be a great American writer, but I love Donald Goings novels. I have four of them. You know, I would have more if I could have get my hands on more. I just don't want to like go on Amazon and buy his entire stack. You know, just have a stack of fucking Donald Goings novels. But I love catching them in the wild. Besides, I like doing that. I don't like buying books on Amazon really. I still think I can get a book cheaper from John L. Books downtown than I could on Amazon. That's just me being silly, but sometimes I can. You know, so this has been a while since I was going on like book hunting. The last time I had to go to urgent care, there was a bookstore across the street, and I went in there and they had a couple of Donald Goines novels I smashed off the wall. Just reading them joints, man, they're so vivid. They are they're almost rap songs in novel form, and most of them came out in like the '60s or '70s. And you could easily make a TV show, make movies about them. Of course, they made movies about some of them. Never Die Alone was a DMX movie. It was based off of Donald Goines novel. It was one of my favorite Donald Goines novels too. Um, it's tremendous. Uh, there's a bunch of other things that I want to read too. There's a lot of novels that I want to read. I'm gonna start keeping a list and then just slowly but surely going through them. But manga and And comics are dominating so much of my time, especially manga, because I'm so behind on the two series that I really like, which is No Gun's Life and Hell's Paradise. And basically everything else just takes me away from those two series. I think I'll be able to burn through everything else I got pretty quickly once I get done with those two series. You know, especially when I get done with episode book 6 of Hell's Paradise, because then I won't have to order the other ones. So then I'll be waiting for those to come. I'll be able to probably get through another book or two to go through that. But that's neither here nor there. All right, so it's been 2 hours and 30 minutes. Thank everybody for stopping through. This has been an extra long live stream. Hopefully you guys watched Guardians or will watch Guardians of the Galaxy if you haven't seen it. Hopefully you liked it if you did. Hopefully you guys liked this live stream. You hit the like button, and I appreciate everybody. Thank you for your time. I'm going to go back to reading, and follow me in the Discord if you need anything, and I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out.